In the summer of 797, a young man was dragged from his throne and taken to the palace where he was born. His mother had ordered it. His name was Constantine VI, Emperor of Byzantium, ruler of the most powerful Christian empire on earth. He was 27 years old, and by the end of that day he would wish he were dead. The soldiers pressed him to a marble floor. They held him still, and on the direct command of his mother, they drove hot iron spikes into his eyes. She didn't want him dead. She wanted him blind, because in the Byzantine legal code, a blinded man could never wear the crown. The empire was hers. Her name was Irene. She had started as a poor orphan girl from Athens. She became the first woman in history to rule the Eastern Roman Empire alone, styling herself not empress but emperor, using the male title because no word existed for what she had become. History tends to describe her as ruthless. That's technically accurate. It misses the point entirely. To understand what Irene did, you have to understand where she came from and what the world expected her to be. Athens in the 750s was a provincial backwater. The great classical city had been eclipsed for centuries, its glory replaced by plague, invasion, and irrelevance. The Irene who was born there around 752 was an orphan. We don't know her family's surname. We don't know exactly what she looked like. What we know is that she was chosen. In 768, the Byzantine Emperor Constantine V was looking for a bride for his eldest son and heir, Leo. The selection process was deliberate and systematic, what historians call a bride show. Young women from across the empire were evaluated. Irene of Athens was 17 years old. She was reportedly exceptionally beautiful. She was also, by every account, exceptionally intelligent. She arrived in Constantinople, and she never left. In 769, she married Leo, the future Leo IV. She had one son, Constantine, born in 771. Leo became emperor in 775, and then, in 780, he died, unexpectedly. He was 24 years old and had ruled for only 5 years. Their son and heir, Constantine VI, was 9. The empire needed a regent. Under Byzantine law, a woman couldn't reign alone, but a mother could govern on behalf of her child. Irene became regent. She was 28 years old, an outsider, an orphan with no family network and no military connections. The court assumed she could be managed. They had no idea what was coming. Her first act as regent was political genius. She convened the Second Council of Nicaea in 787, a major church council that formally reversed the imperial ban on icons. The ban had created a half-century of brutal religious conflict throughout the empire. Monks had been blinded, tortured, exiled. Churches had been stripped bare. Ordinary Christians had lived in fear of the state for decades. Irene ended it. In one move, she restored herself as a defender of orthodoxy, secured the loyalty of the church, which was the most powerful institution in Byzantine society, and separated herself completely from the policies of her late husband's dynasty. She was not Leo's widow. She was Irene. She governed in her own name. Constantine VI turned 16 in 787, then 17, then 18. Byzantine custom was clear. When the young emperor came of age, his mother stepped back. The regency ended. The son ruled. Irene had other thoughts. She had spent nearly a decade building her power. She controlled the imperial treasury. She had cultivated the clergy, the palace bureaucracy, and key military commanders. The networks she had built were personal, loyal to her, not to the throne in the abstract, and certainly not to a son she had largely kept dependent and politically inexperienced. When Constantine began to assert himself, Irene moved against him. In 790, she reportedly tried to arrange things so that he would be passed over entirely, so that she could continue to reign not as regent, but as sole ruler in her own right. She circulated loyalty oaths in the army, asking soldiers to swear that they would never accept Constantine as the primary ruler while she lived. The army refused. Soldiers loyal to Constantine staged a revolt. His mother was seized, her allies purged, and Constantine VI finally took the throne that had always been legally his. Irene was exiled to one of her estates, humiliated, stripped of power. The court assumed she was finished. She was 50 years old and had nowhere left to go. She waited, and she watched while her son slowly, methodically, destroyed himself. Constantine VI turned out to be a poor ruler. He suffered a serious military defeat against the Bulgarians in 791, which shattered his reputation for competence. He made catastrophic decisions in the field. He divorced his perfectly legitimate wife, Empress Maria, to marry his mistress, a scandal that outraged the church and created the very split with the clergy that Irene had spent years carefully mending. His patriarch refused to sanction the marriage. His allies in the church turned on him. Worse, he began blinding and mutilating his own generals. Paranoia, or cruelty, or both. The court began to remember the years when things had worked. By 797, Constantine VI had been emperor in his own right for 7 years. Those 7 years had been a cascade of failures: military, political, religious, personal. Irene had spent those years doing what she did best, quietly, patiently, rebuilding. The conspiracy that formed in 797 was palace-based. The plotters were men from the inner circle of the imperial court, bureaucrats, officials, men who had served under Irene's regency and found the chaos of Constantine's rule intolerable. Constantine was seized while traveling. He was brought to the Porphyra, the purple room in the great palace where imperial children were traditionally born, the room where he himself had entered the world. And there, his eyes were put out. The order to do it in that specific room was deliberate. It was a statement. The man who had been born in the palace, who had grown up to claim what was his by blood, was destroyed in the same place he began. The blinding was intended to be total, fatal even. Constantine VI survived, but blind, broken, politically dead, and imprisoned. He disappears from the historical record almost entirely. We don't know when or how he died. His mother took the throne. She issued coins and documents in her own name alone. She used the title Basileus, the masculine word for emperor, because Basilissa, empress, implied consort or regent. She was neither. She ruled alone. For 5 years, the Eastern Roman Empire was governed by a woman who had clawed, waited, maneuvered, and finally blinded her way to the top of the most complex political system on Earth. The moment Irene took sole power, the political world tried to make sense of what she represented, and largely failed. From Rome, Pope Leo III looked east and saw a woman on the throne that had once belonged to Roman emperors. His solution to the conceptual problem was breathtaking in its audacity. He declared that the Roman imperial throne was effectively vacant, and on Christmas Day 800, he crowned a Frankish king named Charlemagne as Emperor of the Romans. 2 empires, now 2 emperors, and one of them was a woman. The situation created an extraordinary diplomatic episode. Charlemagne, in the early 800s, reportedly proposed marriage to Irene. If the proposal was genuine, and historians debate whether it was ever seriously intended, the implications were staggering. A marriage between Irene and Charlemagne would have, at least nominally, reunited the eastern and western halves of the old Roman Empire under a single household for the first time in 4 centuries. It didn't happen, and Irene's position was already weakening. 5 years of sole female rule had tested the limits of what Byzantine society would tolerate. The military aristocracy had never fully accepted her. Her financial policies didn't help. She reduced taxes on Constantinople and religious institutions, which bought popular affection at the cost of fiscal stability. The treasury began to strain. In October 802, while Irene slept in her palace at Eleutherios, a group of senior officials moved against her. The coup was almost bloodless. She was woken in the night, arrested, and informed that she had been deposed. The new emperor was Nikephoros IV, a senior finance minister, an accountant who had decided that an accountant could run the empire better than a woman who had blinded her own child. Irene accepted it. She had no choice. She was exiled first to the island of Principo, then to the island of Lesbos. She died there in 803, less than a year after her deposition. She had spent the last months of her life reportedly supporting herself by spinning wool. The woman who had governed an empire was reduced to fiber and thread. Irene of Byzantium is not a name most people know. She doesn't appear in popular culture the way Elizabeth I does, or Catherine the Great. Her story is harder to package. She blinded her son. There's no clean way to make that heroic. But consider what she actually accomplished. She ruled the Eastern Roman Empire, arguably the most sophisticated political structure in the medieval world, for over 2 decades, first as regent, then as sole emperor. She resolved one of the most divisive religious crises in Byzantine history. She navigated 4 decades of palace politics in a system specifically designed to exclude her. She survived the loss of power, returned from exile, and took the throne anyway. And she did it as an orphan from the provinces. No family network, no military command, no inherited authority. The Church, interestingly, remembers her differently than secular history does. She is venerated as a saint in the Eastern Orthodox tradition. Feast Day, August 7th. The reason? The restoration of icon veneration. The Church has a long memory for who its friends were. Irene of Byzantium spent her entire life navigating a world that had no category for what she wanted to be. She invented the category anyway. The question history never asks is what she thought about in those final months on Lesbos. Whether she regretted the iron and the screaming and the room where her son was born. Whether she looked back at 50 years of fighting and calculated it as a victory or a loss. Power is the thing you spend your life reaching for. The exile is what you live in after you've held it.